Okay, so let's talk about something that's been making the rounds lately, a really fascinating psychology trick called dopamine anchoring. And it sounds kind of technical, but it's actually this incredibly simple and surprisingly powerful way to get your own brain to work for you. It's all about using your internal reward system to finally build some motivation and get after those goals you've been putting on the back burner.
So tell me if this sounds familiar. You've got that big, important project looming, or maybe you're trying to make studying a real habit. Or hey, maybe it's just getting yourself to the gym consistently. You absolutely know you should be doing it, but actually starting, man, it feels like trying to push a giant boulder up a steep hill. That feeling of resistance, it's something we all know, right?
Well, here's the really interesting part, and honestly, it's kind of a relief. What if I told you that struggle isn't a personal failing? That it's not some lack of willpower or a flaw in your character. The new thinking on this is that you're actually in a fight with your own brain chemistry. And that's fantastic news, because if it's chemistry, that means we can learn to work with it instead of constantly fighting against it.
So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to get into Section 1, Hacking Your Brain's Chemistry. To really get a handle on this, we first have to understand what's going on under the hood, scientifically speaking, and then figure out how to use that internal wiring to our own advantage.
And it really all boils down to one key player, dopamine. Now, you've probably heard it called the feel-good chemical, and yeah, that's part of its job, for sure, but it is so much more than that. Think of dopamine as the engine for motivation. It's the neurotransmitter that drives you to seek out rewards, that helps you focus your attention, and gives you that amazing feeling of pleasure and accomplishment. It's basically the molecule that makes you say, yes, more of this, please.
And this really shows you the whole picture. When a task isn't linked to a dopamine release in your brain, it just feels blah. It's a chore. That's when we get procrastination, that feeling of struggle, and eventually total burnout. But when you can trick your brain into associating that exact same task with a little hit of dopamine, everything changes. Suddenly, you've got motivation, you can focus, you might even find some pleasure in it. The big secret isn't about finding more discipline, it's about learning how to engineer more dopamine.
So the big question is, how do we actually do that? Well, it all comes down to a really practical technique called the dopamine anchoring method. This is the core strategy, the how-to for taking conscious control of that brain chemistry we were just talking about.
So here's what it is, in a nutshell. Dopamine anchoring is just the simple practice of pairing something you genuinely enjoy, something that naturally gives you a little dopamine boost, with a task that you find really difficult or just plain boring. The classic example is this. Imagine you have a favorite podcast, one you absolutely can't wait to listen to. What if you made a rule that you were only allowed to listen to it while you were working out? See what happens? Your brain starts to build a bridge, a new connection. It starts to link the pleasure of that podcast with the effort of the workout.
And putting this into action is a pretty straightforward 4-step process. Okay, step 1, choose a rewarding activity. It has to be something small and enjoyable you can do during the task, like sipping a special kind of tea or listening to a specific album. Step 2, pair it with the task. This means you have to be strict with yourself. You only get that reward when you are doing the hard thing. That's the anchor. Number 3 is maybe the most important. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Consistency is how you forge that new neural pathway in your brain. And then finally, step 4, the long-term goal is to gradually reduce the reward. Because over time, the task itself, the feeling of getting good at it, of making progress, that starts to create its own dopamine. You won't need the anchor as much.
All right, so the theory sounds good, right? But what does this actually look like when you're not in a lab? Let's move into Section 3 and get really practical about this.
I mean, seriously, how can you take this idea and use it, like, today, on that stuff that's probably waiting for you on your to-do list right now?
Okay, let's paint a few pictures. Think about a student who really struggles with a particular class. They could decide to buy that fancy, expensive coffee they love, but only drink it while they're studying for that one class. The coffee itself becomes a ritual, a trigger for their brain to get into focus mode. Or picture a professional staring down a really draining project. They could create an awesome, high-energy playlist that they're only allowed to listen to while working on that specific task. The music becomes the cue for deep work. It even works for athletes. After a really brutal training session, they could have a small, rewarding ritual, something that neurologically cements that feeling of accomplishment and makes them want to do it again.
So we know it's a simple hack, and we've seen some examples. But why is it so powerful? Let's get into the psychology behind it and talk about who this can help the most.
The real magic of this whole technique is that it completely reframes the problem. You stop thinking of procrastination as this enemy you have to defeat with pure brute force willpower. Instead, you become more of a clever strategist. You're using your brain's own built-in, deep-seated desire for rewards to help you. You're using it as a tailwind to build momentum instead of fighting against it as a headwind.
And it's worth pointing out that the source material really highlights how this can be an absolute game changer for certain groups. For anyone who's feeling that sense of motivation burnout, where your internal reward system just feels empty, this provides a much-needed external spark to get things going again. And it's also been found to be especially helpful for people with ADHD because it provides that immediate, tangible reward that can really help sustain focus on a task that might otherwise feel incredibly boring or unstimulating.
So all of this leads us to our final and honestly our most important section, how you personally can use this to start building your own motivation.
I really want to leave you with this powerful idea. So often we sit around and we wait to feel motivated before we start something. But this quote just flips that whole script. It's a reminder that motivation isn't this magical, passive thing that just happens to us. It's an active process. It's something we can actually engineer and create for ourselves. And dopamine anchoring? Well, it's a perfect tool to do just that.
So as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with a personal question to think about. Just look at the week you have coming up. What's that one thing, that one task that you're already kind of dreading? Got it? Okay. Now, what's one small, simple pleasure, a specific song, a favorite drink, maybe just 5 minutes of looking out the window that you can anchor to it? That tiny little shift, it might just be the spark that changes everything.